Now moving on to fertilizer. Fertilizers is any material or of natural or synthetic origin that is applied to soil or plant tissues to supply one or more plant nutrients essential to the growth of plants. Now, nutrient content is higher in fertilizers than organic manure and is released immediately into the soil for uptake by the plants. Fertilizers can be classified into three categories, namely primary, secondary, and micronutrients. Primary fertilizers are further classified into nitrogenous, that is urea, phosphatic, that is diammonium phosphate, DAP, and potassic, that is muriate of potash fertilizers. Secondary fertilizers include calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, while micronutrients include iron, zinc, etc. Now, this would be the fertilizers division into urea, phosphorus, and potash. Ammonia, which is an input of urea, is produced from natural gas through Haber process, which is then processed into urea. This natural gas demand is met through imports. Over 80% of the phosphorus demand is met through import. Sulfur, which is a byproduct of oil refineries, is converted to sulfuric acid, which is used in the manufacture of potassic phosphatic fertilizer. Now, potash is an impure combination of potassium carbonate and potassium salt. 100% potash demand is met through imports. Now, the Indian fertilizer industry. India is the second largest consumer of urea fertilizer after China and also ranks second in the production of nitrogenous fertilizers. Fertilizer industry is one of the eight core industries. Fertilizer subsidy burden remains high. India spent nearly 80,000 crore on fertilizer subsidies in 2018. In India, NPK ratio stands at 6 is to 7, 6.7 is to 2 is to 4 is 2.4 is to 1, whereas the ideal ratio is 4 is to 2 is to 1, showing a skewed trend towards nitrogen, that is urea consumption. Now, fertigation is an injection of fertilizers used for soil amendments, water amendments, and other water soluble products into an irrigation system. There are several advantages of fertilizers like controlling the alkalinity of irrigation water is possible, increasing the availability of nutrients to the plants and reducing leaching of chemical nutrients into the soil. Now, herbigation is the recent technique in which herbicides applied through irrigation water. Now, the application of agro inputs like fertilizers through irrigation is practiced for decades and has preceded such technologies with herbicides. Conventional method of application of herbicide is difficult and person applying this is exposed to chemicals and in sub instances fail to suppress the growth of target weeds. In addition, spray drift is a major problem in it. To avoid such problems, herbigation through micro irrigation controls the target weeds excellently and is the safe and eco friendly method of herbicide application. Now, biofertilizer. So, biofertilizer is a substance which contains microorganisms. When applied to seeds, plant surface, or soil, colonize the rhizosphere or the interior of the plant and promotes growth by increasing the supply or availability of primary nutrients to the host plant. Examples of biofertilizers include ribosomes, azotobacter, azos- azospirillum, mycorrhizas, and phosphate solubilizing bacteria. Now, general issues with the fertilizer sector in India. Now, fertilizers consumption is in India is highly skewed towards urea due to growing price difference between urea and other fertilizers. Overuse of fertilizer has negative impact on environment. Example, excessive use of nitrogenous fertilizers can increase the acidity of soil and leaching of nitrate into the groundwater can also take place. Import is canalized, meaning the import of urea is channelized needs to channelize it through public sector. Now, this causes inefficiencies like delay in imports, which leads to unavailability of fertilizers around planting season when the need is most crucial. Black marketing of urea is rampant, which puts small farmers at disadvantage due to higher costs. Urea subsidy also suffers from leakages, and around 36% of the subsidy is lost through leakages in the industries or smuggled across border. Delay in subsidy release puts strain on fertilizer companies and makes them unsustainable. The fertilizer sector suffers from over regulation As the government controls the prices of urea, fertilizer companies have no incentive to lower the cost of production, thus leading to production inefficiencies. The government passed the Fertilizer Control Order in 1957 to regulate the sale, pricing, and quantity of fertilizer. Movement Control Order was added in 1973 to regulate the distribution of fertilizer. No subsidy was paid on fertilizer before 1977. However, following the oil crisis in 1973 and the resulting increase in food prices, government intervened by subsidizing fertilizer manufacturers in 1977. Now, nutrient-based subsidy. NBS is a central sector scheme started by Ministry of Chemical and Fertilizers in 2010. Under the scheme, subsidy is given to the fertilizer company based on the weight of different nutrients, that is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and potash, contained in the fertilizer. Apart from this, fertilizers fortified with secondary and micronutrients are given additional subsidy. Now, nutrient-based subsidy scheme is used to determine the phosphorus and potassium subsidy, which in turn is based on factors like exchange rate, international and domestic prices of PK fertilizers, inventory level, etc. It has to be noted that urea has been kept out of the NBS scheme and a separate urea subsidy is provided by the government. NBS scheme was brought in to increase the consumption of PK fertilizers and check the overuse of urea, thus ensuring balanced fertilization. The scheme was also aimed at increasing the agricultural productivity, supporting indigenous fertilizer industry, and reducing the fertilizer subsidy burden. Moving on to urea subsidy. Urea subsidy is a central sector scheme of the Department of Fertilizers. The new urea policy of 2015 has been notified by the Department of Fertilizers, extended till 2019-20, with the objective of maximizing indigenous urea production, promoting energy efficiency in urea production, and rationalizing subsidy burden on the government. It is applicable to the existing 25 gas based units. Now, urea is the only controlled fertilizer and is sold at statutorily notified sale price. On the other hand, PK fertilizers are decontrolled and is sold at indicative MRPs. Other initiatives in the sector is the indicative pricing. To be eligible for urea subsidies, companies should not sell other fertilizers above the indicative price. New pricing scheme. It is a subsidy scheme for urea units based on the price of feedstock used and vintage of plants. Now, government decides the cost of production through surveys. The difference between the cost of production and selling price is paid as subsidy. Neem coated urea. Now, Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers made it mandatory for fertilizer companies to neem coat the urea before selling it. Neem coated urea provides the following benefits. Neem coating slows down the rate of dissolution of urea in soil, helping plants gain more nutrients based on their needs. This in turn improves yield of the produce. Neem coating also reduces the pest attacks as neem is a natural insecticide. Neem coating will prevent diversion of heavily subsidized urea towards non-agricultural purposes like chemicals, industry, and other uses like making adulterated milk. Collection of neem seeds for making neem coated urea will help generate employment in rural areas. Now, Soil Health Card is a core scheme launched in 2015 at Suratgarh, Rajasthan by the Department of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmer Welfare. The scheme assists state governments to issue soil health cards to all farmers in the country. A farmer's land is tested and he has given updated soil health card every 2 years. The scheme also envisages setting up soil testing labs. Soil health card provides information to the farmers regarding the nutrient status of the soil. It recommends appropriate dosage of nutrients to be applied for improving soil health and its fertility. The card also advises on which type of crop and irrigation method will suit his farm depending on his soil health. Thus, it can help reduce the cultivation cost by application of the right amount of fertilizer and also improve crop productivity. As per the National Productivity Council, the scheme has led to a decrease in the use of chemical fertilizers by 8 to 10% and increase in crop yield by 5 to 6%. Despite the benefits of soil health card, it also faces several challenges like infrastructural issues like old soil testing labs, non-functional equipments, etc. Human resource related challenges like lack of trained and skilled manpower for testing soil samples. Also, there is a limited awareness amongst farmers regarding the benefit of the scheme. Further, many a times, farmers are unable to understand the recommendation of the soil health card. Miscellaneous challenges like delays in providing testing reports, non availability of recommended fertilizers, language barriers, as report may not be available in local languages. In order to make the scheme a success, government needs to focus on setting up soil testing laboratories at local level, initiating skilling programs for developing trained manpower for testing, and analyzing soil samples, providing financial backups for addressing the infrastructural gaps. Now, DBT, that is direct benefit transfer. Under DBT, the fertilizer subsidy will be released to the fertilizer companies instead of the beneficiaries after the sale is made by the retailer to the beneficiary. However, government is considering a scheme under which farmers will be directly transferred the subsidy for fertilizer purchase through their bank accounts rather than transferring it to the fertilizer companies, as it is done in case of LPG subsidies. DBT in fertilizer sector is highly beneficial as it can help weed out ghost beneficiaries due to better authentication. It will prevent black marketing of fertilizers. Farmers who will be transferred the subsidy will have the freedom of choice to buy fertilizers as per their need. It will reduce the financial burden of the state by checking leakages. DBT in this sector is a step towards market based pricing. Earlier, government decided fertilizer price, hence, there would be no incentive for fertilizer companies to be efficient and minimize cost. However, there are issues with DBT which needs to be addressed, like there are high chances of inclusion and exclusion errors. Many a times the money transferred under DBT is wasted in form of alcoholism, etc. DBT might not be successful as there is insufficient financial inclusion. Farmers do not have bank accounts where money can be transferred. DBT requires state center coordination, which is often lacking as agriculture is a state subject. As DBT will lead to a market based pricing regime for fertilizers, price of fertilizers may increase. Hence, the money transfer under it may become insufficient to buy fertilizers. Different regions, depending on their land data, have different agricultural input requirements and may require different subsidy amounts. However, in absence of comprehensive land data, deciding the subsidy amount will be difficult. Lastly, DBT also suffers from technical issues like biometric authentication failures, internet connectivity related challenges, and digital illiteracy, etc. Now, a few steps can be implemented to address the issues with DBT include financial inclusions need to be promoted. Forms of authentication other than Aadhaar should be made available. DBT Sathi should be deployed as the first point of facilitation in accessing subsidy. There should be grievance redressal mechanism to deal with issues arising from the implementation of DBT. Digital training should be given to retailers to operate point of sale devices. A nationwide land modernization program should be undertaken to develop a comprehensive land data. Soil health cards should be issued accordingly to assess the land status. This will help in ensuring evidence-based DBT mechanism where subsidy amount is transferred based on the land requirements. Other steps to promote growth of fertilizer sector in India. Decanalization of urea import is needed, which will provide greater freedom and flexibility in import decisions of urea depending on the demand. Government should gradually shift towards a market-based pricing regime for urea sector. Gas pooling can be done to ensure that natural gas is supplied in a timely and cost-effective manner to the fertilizer plants. Extensive supply chain should be set up to ensure timely availability of fertilizers to the farmers. Digitization of land records should be done to ensure timely reach of subsidies to the farmers. An integrated approach is need of the hour, wherein environmental concerns are kept in mind while encouraging the use of inorganic fertilizers. Soil health card scheme should be implemented at a heightened pace to ensure this. Likewise, organic fertilizers need to be promoted. Now, moving on to pesticides. Pesticides are substances used to control pests. The term pesticide include all of the following, which is herbicide, insecticide, fungicide, etc. Example of pesticides are neem oil that can be applied used as pesticide to control the proliferation of some species of insects and mites. Pyrethrin is a biodegradable non-persistent pesticide which is used to kill mosquitoes, fleas and other insects. Carbofuron, methylparathion, fetorate, monocrotophos, methyl profenophos, and triozophos are such examples. India is the fourth largest producer of pesticides in the world, but our per hectare pesticide consumption is far less than the developed countries. Pesticides in India are regulated under the Insecticide Act of 1968 and Insecticide Rules of 1971. Around 290 pesticides are registered in India with the Directorate of Plant Protection, Quarantine and Storage, which is an attached office under the Agriculture Ministry. Now, acts related to pesticides. The Insecticide Act of 1968 regulates the import, manufacture, sale, transport, distribution, and use of insecticides and pesticides in order to prevent risks to human beings and animals. A central insecticide board was established under the Section 4 of the Act, and it works under the administrative jurisdiction of Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare. The role of the board is to advise governments on matter related to administration of the Act. The Pesticides Management Bill of 2020 has the following provisions. Pesticide data will be made openly available to farmers in digital format in all languages. It will help farmers understand the strengths and weaknesses of pesticides, the risks, and the alternatives. A central fund will be created to provide compensation in case of any loss due to low quality of pesticides. Promotion of organic pesticide will be undertaken. All pesticide manufacture will be registered and bound by the Act. Now, biopesticides are certain types of pesticides derived from such natural materials such as animals, plants, bacteria, and certain minerals. Example, canola oil and baking soda have pesticidal applications and are considered biopesticides. Bacteria, fungi, and flowering plants can be employed as biopesticides. Biopesticides are not hazardous to human health as they are essential to maintain the biodiversity of an ecosystem. Weeds are important biotic constraints to food production. Now, wheat competes with crops for the same resources, basically water, nutrients, lights, carbon dioxide. Furthermore, they alternate hosts for crop pests and pathogens. Moreover, some of them lack autotrophy and fully develop only by parasitizing crops or wild hosts. Globalization of trade and weak legislation on weed control in most of the developing countries has favored the spread of invasive aliens plant. Now, weeds in general precede crop on farming land and are major yield reducing factors. In ecological terms, most annual weed strategists establishing populations with high relative growth rate. Thus, these are the reasons. Thus, they produce numerous viable seeds and their population quickly builds up in an exponential pattern. Now, wheat competition with crop reduces agricultural output, that is quantity and quality, and increases external costs by spreading them across farm boundaries. It is also a major constraint to increase farmers' productivity, particularly in developing countries where weed control claims 20 to 50% of the farmers' time and keeps small holders in vicious cycle of poverty. Therefore, weed management, which involves the process of limiting weed infestation and minimizing competition with crops, has become especially important. Weedicides, which are chemical used for killing weeds, can be used in this regard. For example, glyphosate is a weedicide herbicide which is often categorized as a probable carcinogen for humans. Further methods like digging, pulling, disking, plowing, mowing are used for weed control. Integrated weed management is another weed management technique based on combination of preventive, cultural, mechanical and chemical practices. A single weed control method is not feasible due to number of different weed species and their diverse life cycles and survival strategies. In addition, controlling weeds with one or two methods provide the weed a chance to adapt to those practices. In essence, the development of integrated weed management program is based on few general principles that can be used at any farm. Example, use of agronomics practices that limit the introduction and spread of weeds, preventing weed problems before they start. Help the crop compete with wheat, that is, choke out the weeds. Use practices that keep weed off balance, that do not allow weeds to adapt. There are several issues with pesticide usage in India. Instances of acute toxicity of farmers due to pesticide are common. Exposure to pesticides can cause a broad range of nervous system symptoms like headaches, fatigues, etc. Chronic toxicity of pesticide is big health threat for consumers. Pesticides move up the food chain through process of biomagnification and ultimately reach humans, impacting their health. In 2014, National Crimes Record Bureau recorded 7,365 cases of pesticide poisoning, out of which 5,915 died. Continuous use of pesticides have negatively impacted soil health and reduced agricultural productivity. While agriculture is a state subject, production, education, and research are governed under Insecticide Act, which is a central act. This often leads to regulatory hurdles and center-state conflict. Other issues include black marketing, rampant illegal use of banned pesticides, etc. Steps which need to be undertaken to regulate pesticide usage in India is capacity building of farmers need to be undertaken to make them aware of the judicious use of pesticides. Focus should be on minimal use of pesticides. The aim should be to use pesticide as the last resort. Chemical fertilizers, pesticides should be phased out as soon as possible by providing available alternatives. Example, biopesticides could be a plausible alternative. We should adopt integrated pest management approach. Now IPM combines biological, cultural and chemical practices to control pests in agricultural production. Natural predators or parasites are used to control pests, and selective pesticides are used only as backup when pests are unable to be controlled by natural means. State government should have the power to regulate pesticides as they have better idea about agroecological aspects in their state. Pesticides, due to their hazardous nature, must not be allowed to be promoted. All kinds of pesticide advertisement should be banned in India. Based on acute toxicity, WHO classifies certain pesticides as extremely hazardous class A1A and highly hazardous class 1B. Government should make necessary provisions to ban the sale and use of class 1 pesticides. Government recently banned 18 pesticides based on the recommendation of Anupam Verma committee, but it left out two heavily used class 1 pesticides, that is monocrotophos and carbofuran. Legislative power must be transferred to the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare from the present Agricultural Ministry to address the health related concerns related to pesticide usage. Following legislations must be brought to regulate the conduct of pesticide company. It should be made illegal to sell pesticide by a pesticide company without personal protective equipments or safety gears. Provision of standard operating procedures should be made in case of acute medical emergencies. The polluter pays principle should be made the basis for fixing liabilities and compensation for any company. Moving on to organic farming. Organic farming is an agricultural system which involves cultivating plants and rearing animals in a natural way. It is a technique which uses biological materials and avoids synthetic substances to maintain soil fertility and ecological balance. Examples of organic manure include fish meal, bone meal, green leaf manuring, oil cakes, compost manure, etc. In 2015, Sikkim became the first India's first fully organic state. Now, components of organic farming include crop rotation, biological management, animal husbandry, biofertilizers, manure, vermicomposting, and grief leaf manure. Status of organic farming in India. India introduced the organic farming policy in 2005, but it is still in its nascent stage. As per the Ministry of Agricultural and Farmers Welfare, about 2.78 million hectares of farmland was under organic cultivation as of March 2020, which is only 2% of the 140 million hectares of the net sown area in the country. Now, Madhya Pradesh tops the list with 0.76 million hectares under organic cultivation. Top three states are Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Rajasthan, which contribute to about half of the area under organic cultivation. Now, Australia leads the chart in countries, followed by Argentina and USA. India is well below these countries in land under organic farming by the countries. However, we see that Australia is way beyond other countries, and all these countries fall in a narrow bracket range of 3 to 1, wherein India is 1.18 million hectares is under organic farming. Now, although India has very small area under organic farming, it ranks first in terms of number of organic farmers. The number of farmers engaged in organic farming is close to 6 lakhs in India. Now, organic farming has several benefits compared to fertilizers based conventional agriculture. It uses fewer pesticides, which otherwise has negative impact on soil health. It reduces soil erosion. It decreases nitrate leaching into groundwater and surface water. Organically grown crops command higher prices in the market, thus increasing farmers' income. It reduces government's fertilizer subsidy burden due to low usage of chemical fertilizers. This in turn can manage the fiscal deficit. However, there are certain challenges associated with organic farming, like higher food cost for consumers. Yields of organic crops have been found to be approximately 25% lower than the overall conventionally grown crops, although this can vary depending on the type of crop. Now, farmers in India lack the requisite skills in organic farming. Good quality organic manure is not readily available. There is limited market for organically grown crops. Now, organic food regulatory system in India. Organics is food in India includes imports is regulated by FSI, that is Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. FSI is an autonomous statutory body established under the FSS Act, that is Food Safety and Standards Act of 2006, which replaced the Prevention of Food Adulteration Act 1954 by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare as the administrative ministry for FSI. Organic food in India is regulated through the following mechanism: Participatory Guarantee Scheme. Now, PGS is a process of certifying organic products which ensures that their production takes place in accordance with the laid down quality standards. The certification is in the form of a documented logo or statement. PGS emphasizes on participation of stakeholders, including producers and consumers, and operates outside the framework of third party certification. The scheme is implemented by the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare and is applicable on farm activities like crop production, processing, livestock rearing, etc. Off farm processing activities such as storage, transport are, however, not covered. Now, National Program for Organic Production is implemented by the Agricultural Processed Food Products Export Development Authority, that is APIDA, grant organic farming certification through third party certification process. APIDA is a statutory body under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. European Commission, Switzerland, USA have recognized NPOP standards as equivalent to their respective accreditation system. Now, Jaivik Bharat portal is a regulatory portal on organic food in India and has been jointly developed by FSI, APIDA, and PGS India. Jaivik Kheti portal is a portal by Agriculture Ministry which helps connect organic buyers and sellers with each other. Zero budget natural farming is a natural farming developed by Subhas Palekar. It is a type of farming in which there is no use of chemical pesticides and agriculture is carried out in an eco friendly manner. This helps in restoring soil fertility and organic matter. Zero budget natural farming reduces the cost of production down to zero due to utilization of all natural resources available in and around the crops. Parampar- Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, launched by the Agricultural Ministry, is an elaborated component of soil health management of major project National Mission on Sustainable Agriculture. Under Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, organic farming is promoted through adoption of organic villages by cluster approach and PGS certification. That'll be it.